A low, resonant rumble ran through Oldridge Forest as dawn's first pale light filtered through the towering canopy. Dr. Evelyn Hartley tightened her grip on the iron bark lantern, its golden beam dancing across damp moss and braided roots that clawed at the forest floor. She and her team of 5 archaeologists crept forward, following the narrow hollow that local lore claimed led to the moonlit burrow, a secret entrance beneath the oldest oak in the grove. The oak itself stood atop a gentle rise, its trunk wider than a cottage's door, and its gnarled limbs stretching like arthritic arms into the mist. Evelyn knelt to examine the base, brushing aside a tangle of ivy to reveal a fist-sized fissure in the root's basalt cradle. A sudden scratching sound broke the hush, the unmistakable click of badger claws, and a stocky muzzle emerged, whiskers twitching. Algernon, Oldridge's venerable European badger, peered at them with intelligent, coal-black eyes. His fur was dusted silver where age had begun to gray his shoulders. He sniffed the air, then nudged a loose stone with his broad paw, revealing a shallow cavity. With an expectant snort, he backed away as if urging them to follow. Evelyn exchanged a stunned glance with her assistant Marco, then crawled forward. The air grew cooler and richer with loam as she slid through the tight gap, lantern held before her. On the other side lay a vaulted chamber, hewn by ancient subterranean streams. Its walls glistened with mineral streaks, and clusters of phosphorescent fungi cast an eerie green glow. Thick carpets of moss muffled their footsteps. Stone benches curved along the chamber's periphery, each carved with stylized mushroom caps and tiny paw prints. At the center, a flat weathered boulder served as an altar for a ring of vellum scrolls, tied with vine-strung lichen, whose pale luminescence pulsed like slow heartbeats. Algernon padded among them, sniffing reverently, then settled beside the circle, as if guarding the knowledge within. Silence pressed in, broken only by the steady drip of moisture from a stalactite overhead. Evelyn knelt at the boulder, heart pounding. With trembling fingers, she unwrapped the first scroll. Its surface was covered in flowing script, the ledger of Living Grove, detailing centuries-old techniques for nurturing saplings, guiding water through hollowed logs, and cultivating mushroom rings to enrich forest soils. Behind her, Marco and the others discovered stone shelves hewn into the cavern walls, each groove cradling leather-bound tomes and clay tablets inscribed with fox tracks, squirrel middens, and the intricate genealogies of Oldridge's badger clan. "Unbelievable," Marco whispered. "It's a lost library, written by the forest's own guardians." Evelyn pressed her palm to Algernon's side. The badger's fur bristled with contentment, as if he recognized her amazement, and her promise to honor this hidden treasury. In that hushed, luminescent chamber, beneath the ancient oak, the team realized their discovery would rewrite the story of Oldridge Forest, its secrets safeguarded for generations by a quiet lineage of badger librarians, and now entrusted to human hands. As the soft green glow of phosphorescent fungi bathed the chamber, Dr. Evelyn Hartley gingerly lifted the first scroll from the ring of lichen-strung vellum. Its parchment was supple yet remarkably intact, the edges stained with centuries of earth and root. She carried it to a cluster of stone benches hewn into the sandstone walls, benches etched with spiraling mushroom motifs and tiny badger paw imprints. Seated before the inaugural scroll, Evelyn untied the lichen cord, pausing as its faint bioluminescence pulsed like a heartbeat. She unrolled the vellum to reveal the Ledger of Living Grove, its pages filled with elegant, flowing script and intricate ink illustrations. The text was divided into sections, each bearing titles in an ancient forest runic script that translated, Evelyn would later discover, into sapling stewardship, mushroom mycelia mapping, and water song channels. Under lantern light, Evelyn and her assistant, Marco, pored over the first entry. Sapling stewardship, guiding the young oaks. Detailed diagrams showed how to weave flexible vines from native lianas around tender sapling trunks, supporting them against wind shear without girdling their bark. Marginal notes, written in a smaller subservient hand, suggested seasonal timing, advising that plantings occur 3 moons after the spring equinox, when soil moisture peaked without risk of frost. Next came mushroom mycelia mapping, illustrated with delicate cross-sections of underground fungal networks. The ledger described how certain mushrooms, those bearing umbrella caps with dark gills, should be introduced near decaying logs to accelerate nutrient return to the soil. It even specified the ideal spore density per square foot, measured by counting cap gills under moonlight. Evelyn's pulse quickened. This was ecological engineering far ahead of modern mycological science. The third section, water song channels, proved equally astonishing. A series of gentle staves, like musical notation, corresponded to sequences of soft humming and tonal variations. According to the text, a duet of low and high hums, sustained for precisely 7 minutes beside a hollowed log, coaxed subterranean springs to alter their flow, redirecting water gently into new irrigation channels cut by badger paws. Small inset diagrams showed how to carve the logs without damaging their heartwood, preserving both structure and acoustic resonance. As Evelyn read aloud, a faint echo of her words seemed to bounce back from the distant walls, and a soft chitter behind her confirmed Algernon's attentive presence. The badger moved to a section of nearby wall, his claws tracing deep grooves that aligned perfectly with one of the ledger's irrigation maps. There, he pressed a secret notch. A hidden panel shifted, revealing a recessed alcove stocked with clay tablets engraved with seasonal schedules and fungal spore samples. Evelyn's team gasped. The forest's librarians had not only recorded their knowledge, but engineered safeguards and secret keys known only to badger successors. Here, beneath the oak's roots, they preserved an entire ecosystem's blueprint. Vital instructions passed through generations of burrow and boon. As her lantern cast dancing shadows on the moss-clad benches, Evelyn realized this discovery transcended archaeology. It was an invitation to restore Oldridge Forest to its ancient flourishing, a partnership with the badger custodians themselves. And as she carefully repacked the ledger and clay tablets, she vowed to honor that trust, ensuring the secrets of the living grove would awaken once more under human hands, guided by badger wisdom. By the time the team had cataloged the ledger of Living Grove and unearthed the clay tablet irrigation maps, the cavern's air had grown thick with anticipation. Dr. Hartley motioned to Marco to unpack the next treasure, a cluster of vellum scrolls tied with glowing lichen, each scroll's luminescence pulsing softly like a heartbeat. Algernon, the venerable badger librarian, padded forward and lightly nudged the top scroll from its mossy ring, and Evelyn cradled it as if it were the forest's very pulse. The parchment bore the elegant title, Scrolls of Seasonal Song, and beneath it, lines of flowing script curved across the page like vine tendrils. Accompanying these verses were meticulously drawn musical staves, each notation annotated with tiny symbols of birds, frogs, or wind-blown leaves. Evelyn unrolled the first scroll, Spring Dawn Awakening, and read, Begin at the vernal equinox's first light. 2 clear trills to mimic dawn's lark flight. Follow with bass hums, soft and low, to coax the hibernal roots to grow. As she sang the opening bird call notes, her voice echoed through the chamber, and in the lamplit shadows, dust motes stirred like a silent audience. Several team members exchanged astonished glances, until a faint, distant chorus of thrush-like calls drifted through a hidden fissure, as though the forest beyond had heard and answered. Encouraged, Marco prefaced the next verses, Midsummer Frog Chorus, and hummed the low, pulsing cadence. Instantly, a series of soft croaks rolled through the subterranean pools. The glassy water stirred and dozens of cave frogs emerged, their pearlescent bodies arching in a rhythmic ballet that mirrored the scroll's notation. Evelyn gasped. The scrolls were not mere poetry, but living instructions, capable of summoning and synchronizing animal behaviors. Turning to the third parchment, Autumn Equinox Drumming, the team read how a measured sequence of hollow log taps, combined with a specific low-tone hum, would trigger nut and seed drop from surface trees. With careful coordination, they assembled a fallen hollow limb, and Evelyn tapped its hollowed core in the prescribed rhythm. Above, a subtle tremor vibrated through the cavern floor, and distant branches outside rattled in answer, evidence that ancient badger engineers had linked this subterranean chamber to living trees above. As the scroll's final refrain, winter's whisper and the frost-born slumber, echoed through the vault, the team's awe deepened. The scroll prescribed a duet of single, sustained notes at dusk, intended to lull insect colonies into dormancy and signal denning mammals to deepen their shelters. With hesitant courage, Evelyn and Marco pressed their voices together in a low, sonorous chant. The chamber fell into a profound hush, punctuated only by the soft drip of condensation, an auditory promise of rest beneath the oak's ancient roots. When the last scroll was resealed in its lichen cord, the historians understood their calling. These scrolls of seasonal song weren't relics of superstition, but an ecological orchestra score, practice notes for a symphony that sustained the forest through centuries of change. And as Algernon settled beside the empty ring, his fur glimmering in the lantern light, Evelyn felt the mantle of stewardship settle on her shoulders. To learn these songs, to teach them again, and to honor the living library that pulsed beneath the oak's broad boughs. By the time the lantern's glow had softened to a golden hush, Dr. Hartley's team had finished cataloging the seasonal scrolls. Evelyn motioned Marco toward a recessed niche high in the sandstone wall, its opening partially obscured by tangled roots. With a grunt of exertion, he pried the roots aside to reveal a thick, leather-bound volume secured by a carved stone clasp in the shape of a badger's paw. "This must be it," Marco whispered, tracing the embossed legend on the cover. Codex of Creature Kinship. Evelyn's breath caught as she eased the clasp open, the leather spine creaking like an ancient hinge. The pages within, crafted from treated bark pulp and interleaved with thin copper sheets, shimmered in the lantern light. They laid the codex across a moss-wreathed bench. Its opening illustration spanned 2 pages, a concentric family tree of forest inhabitants where foxes and badgers shared overlapping branches, owls and tree frogs formed nested loops, and solitary herons perched on the outer rings. Each creature's portrait, hand-painted in earthy ochres and verdant greens, bore annotations in the forest runic script Evelyn had grown to recognize. Mating seasons, favored den sites, and dietary preferences. Evelyn turned the page to the first section, Clans of the Burrow and Hollow. Here, schematic diagrams depicted badger set architectures, main tunnels, nest chambers lined with soft grasses, and emergency exits concealed by low-profile root domes. Marginalia, in a lighter hand, recorded the network of Oldridge sets, including the one Algernon called home, and urged successive librarians to expand each set in harmony with tree root growth. Marco's finger traced a second entry, Foxfire Fellowship. Detailed field notes described how badgers and foxes maintained mutual patrols along the forest's edge. In one passage, an elderly badger had once marked fox dens with scratch patterns, silent signals indicating which burrows were abandoned and which still housed kits. In return, foxes alerted their badger companions to approaching predators through specific yips and body postures. The codex even provided a phonetic fox whistle for the first incoming fox of each new season. As the team pored over the codex, a hush fell, broken only by Algernon's soft snuffle. They turned to find the badger nudging a copper plate toward them. Its surface bore microscopic depressions, an entry titled Beetle Bridges and Pollinator Paths. The plate illustrated how leafcutter and carrion beetles had grazed pathways through fallen logs, encouraging pollinator insects to traverse the forest floor in seasonal migrations. Tiny vignettes showed beetles ferrying fungal spores between rotting timbers and flowering shrubs, an unsung liaison no human ecologist had ever charted until now. Evelyn felt tears sting her eyes. This codex was not merely a bestiary. It was a manifesto of interspecies diplomacy, an acknowledgement that every creature, from fox to beetle, played a vital role in the forest's tapestry. Late into the night, they studied entry after entry. The owl's twilight vigil, which mapped roost sites selected for optimal acoustic projection. Squirrel seed stewardship, which detailed cache burial strategies that maximized oak regeneration. And even spiderweb weather warnings, in which sheetwebs served as barometers for impending storms. When the final copper plate was closed, Evelyn gently replaced the codex on its shelf. The air in the cavern felt charged with newfound respect for the forest's hidden diplomats, badgers who had recorded, foxes who had guided, and beetles who had bridged worlds. As Algernon settled beside the seal of the set, the team realized their mission had deepened. They would not merely extract these secrets, they would live them, forging a new alliance between humanity and the shrouded council of creature kinship that thrived beneath the ancient oak. As Dawn's pale fingers crept through fissures in the sandstone ceiling, Dr. Evelyn Hartley led her team deeper into the library's recesses, guided by Algernon's purposeful snuffles. Beyond the codex niche lay a heavy stone portal, its surface intricately carved with winding folktale scenes. A fox dancing around a firefly, an owl perched atop a toadstool ring, and a badger bowing before a sapling. At its center, a badger paw relief served as a keyhole. Evelyn watched in awe as Algernon pressed his claw into the paw-shaped depression. With a deep, resonant click, the portal ground open, revealing a domed annex too perfectly circular to be natural. The vault of forgotten fables lay before them, its curved walls lined with weathered oilskins, parchments, and fragile leaf pulp pages, each bound by woven root fiber. Stepping inside, the lantern light picked out story map murals painted across the vault's interior, winding river paths that led animals on seasonal migrations, anthropomorphic scenes of forest councils where sapling spirits and animal guardians debated the year's harvest, and cosmic diagrams showing how constellations guided nocturnal creatures. Evelyn whispered, "These are the myths that shape the very soul of the forest." At the vault's heart stood a circular dais engraved with concentric runes. Resting atop was the greatest treasure, the Fables of the Forest Kin, a lavishly illustrated tome whose pages rustled like wind through dry leaves. Its first fable, The Night the Oak Spoke, recounted how Oldridge's grandest oak had once warned the woodland creatures of a great drought by singing through its rings, prompting the badgers to reroot hidden springs and save saplings from withering. Evelyn turned to the next tale, The Feast of the Foxfire, which told of a lonely fox whose luminous tail guided nocturnal pollinators to rare moon-blooming flowers. Captivated by the fox's generosity, the badgers learned to follow its glow and discovered secret fungal groves used for forest medicine. Each illustration glowed with pigment traces, fading blues for foxfire, silver for moon petals, and deep crimson for the root's healing sap. Further chapters revealed moral fables, The Boastful Badger and the Humble Squirrel, where a braggart badger learned humility by searching in vain for a lost acorn buried by the humble squirrel's precise memory, and The Sky Serpent's Oath, an allegory of cloud-shaped formations that warned of coming storms, teaching creatures to seek shelter in the vaulted oak hollows. As the team absorbed these stories, Algernon padded to a dusty shelf of leather scroll cases. He selected one and nudged it toward Evelyn. She unrolled the Tales of the Root Weavers, instructive parables explaining how certain insects and fungi spun subterranean webs that bound soil layers, preventing erosion during monsoons. These tales weren't mere entertainment. They were oral science encoded as morality plays. Hours passed as the scholars read by lantern light, their notebooks filling with story and strategy alike. Outside, the forest above stirred with its own rhythms, unaware that its ancient myths lay preserved beneath their feet. Evelyn felt a profound kinship with the badger librarian, whose silent vigilance had kept these fables alive through centuries of neglect. When a soft scuttling heralded Algernon's readiness to depart, Evelyn carefully returned each fable to its place. The stone portal rumbled closed behind them, sealing the vault's wonders until they could share them again under the oak's roots. As she emerged into the damp corridor, Evelyn knew that these forgotten fables would forever change how humanity understood and protected the living stories of Oldridge Forest. By the time lanterns flickered low and shadows crept along the cavern's sandstone walls, Dr. Hartley's team had unearthed nearly every scroll and tome, save one final treasure, the massive chronicle of changing seasons, bound in supple deerhide and sealed with brass clasps engraved in cyclical glyphs. Nestled on a raised dais, etched with concentric rings, the chronicle awaited discovery beneath a web of trailing roots. Evelyn approached reverently, brushing aside thick liana tendrils to reveal the brass symbols, a snowflake, a raindrop, a sunburst, and a leaf. With Marco's steady assistance, she lifted the heavy cover. Inside lay fold-out plates spanning 2 meters, each a lavishly illustrated panorama of Oldridge Forest's annual cycle. Winter's icy hush, spring's chorus of bloom, summer's verdant crescendo, and autumn's russet farewell. Across the first fold, winter's embrace, delicate watercolor scenes showed frost-laced hollows where mushrooms slept in spore-studded clusters. Margin notes prescribed the precise winter solstice chant, a slow, humming duet, to gently coax subterranean vents to release warmth, keeping saplings alive in the deepest frost. As Evelyn hummed the low melody, a tingling warmth pulsed through the cavern floor, and the phosphorescent fungi flared brighter in response. Turning the page to Spring's Renewal, Evelyn found diagrams of flowering schedules tied to lunar phases. Hand-drawn moon glyphs marked planting days for canopy seedlings, ensuring young roots tapped into rising groundwater. She and Marco followed the instructions, tracing the map to an alcove where a buried aquifer glimmered in a shallow pool. By redirecting its flow through hollowed log channels as depicted, they watched water spill into root networks, promising future sapling growth. The chronicle's third spread, Summer's Guardianship, depicted insect and avian migrations. Maps of flight lanes and foraging corridors were annotated with polka-dot beetle icons and feather sketches. Evelyn realized these routes aligned with subtle ridges above ground. By clearing invasive understory along these lanes, she could revive critical pollinator highways. As she sketched her plans, Algernon padded forward and tapped the page, showing termite mound clusters, the forest's unsung climate regulators, reminding her that every creature's path belonged in the seasonal tapestry. Finally, the fold-out for autumn's harvest illustrated the great nut and berry drop, volumes of acorns buried by squirrels, caches cornered by badgers, and fruit-heavy branches swaying in cool winds. Margin glyphs instructed the harvest song, a brisk staccato chant, to signal peak ripeness and trigger synchronized fruiting. Evelyn's team practiced the chant in echoing tones, and faint rustlings from the cavity above hinted that the oak's highest boughs had heard their summons. As the chronicle closed, Evelyn felt the weight of ages settle in her chest. This was more than a record. It was a living guide, a covenant between earthborn librarians and the forest they tended. With the chronicle's wisdom now in human hands and Algernon's knowing gaze upon them, the team vowed to enact these ancient rites above ground, ushering Oldridge Forest into a new era of stewardship woven through the turning seasons. As the first rays of sun filtered through the ancient oak's highest branches, Dr. Evelyn Hartley and her team emerged from the moonlit burrow into the soft glow of dawn. Lanterns were stowed, notebooks brimming with centuries of forest wisdom. The world above seemed unchanged. Dewy ferns unfurled, birds greeted the light, but each historian carried inside a transformed understanding of Oldridge Forest. Gathered at the oak's moss-carpeted base stood Evelyn, Marco, and the rest of the team, flanked by Algernon and his badger kin. In their paws and packs lay the ledger of living grove, the scrolls of seasonal song, the codex of creature kinship, the vat of forgotten fables, and the vast chronicle of changing seasons, texts once hidden beneath roots, now entrusted to human hands. Evelyn stepped forward and addressed her companions, voice steady with reverence. Today, we become not just scholars, but partners in the forest's care. We vow to honor these teachings, planting saplings, guiding water, singing the seasonal songs, and tending every creature's way, so that Oldridge may flourish as it once did. She paused, meeting Algernon's wise, coal-black gaze. And we vow to protect the Badger librarian's legacy, ensuring their guardianship is never forgotten. With that, the team dispersed along the forest floor. Marco led a small party to the old spring, where they threaded hollowed logs, as described in the ledger, hearing water gurgle into new channels. Dr. Anita Chow gathered local volunteers to learn the seasonal songs, rehearsing bird call trills beneath budding canopy blooms. Forester James Jacobs traced the migration corridors in the codex, clearing invasive vines to reopen beetle and bird pathways. Mycologist Priya Singh distributed spore packets from the vault, inoculating fallen logs with beneficial mushroom species. Even the local schoolchildren joined Algernon in a playful harvest song, shaking ripe berries from low bushes in echo of the chronicle's autumn refrain. By midday, the ancient oak grove hummed with renewed activity, a living symphony orchestrated by age-old wisdom and modern stewardship. Evelyn paused at the burrow's entrance, where Algernon nosed open a final scroll case to reveal a simple badger paw seal and a note: "Guide well, and the forest guides you." With hearts full and hands busy, the scholars realized their greatest discovery was not the trove of knowledge itself, but the living partnership it forged between humans and the forest's own stewards. And as the sun climbed high, sunlight danced on leaf and root, an emerald testament to a new era of cooperation, where every fur, feather, and frond played its part in the unfolding story of Oldridge Forest's enduring legacy.